Hi, I'm Ted Wolf, presented by GuideWise. Welcome to the Implementors podcast, where we connect you to the stories and insights of people who have mastered implementation. Why? Because ideas are easy, but implementation is hard. Join us as we uncover the secrets of successful implementation so you can conquer your implementation struggles. Welcome to the Implementors podcast presented by GuideWise, where we focus on the topic of implementation because ideas are easy, implementation is hard. Today, my guest is Vinod Kumar, a visionary leader in the e-commerce and AI sectors, and is the founder and CEO of Syntium AI. Vinod's impressive career includes roles at Demandware and Salesforce, and as the head of business insights at Salesforce Commerce Cloud, he gained deep expertise in e-commerce and data-driven strategies. Welcome, Vinod.
Thank you, Ted. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me on your show.
Looking forward very much to talking to you because sometimes people talk about AI in theory. I think you're going to be able to talk today to us in practical applications, and I'm really looking forward to that. Vinod, your organization, Syntium AI, you're wearing three hats. You're in business that you're starting, you're in technology in a deep way, and you're in the e-commerce merchandising area. Which one of those three really grabs your heart?
I think merchandising is a fascinating field to me. Technology is an enabler, but merchandising, the act of merchandising, there's something about it that is viscerally attractive, because if you think about it, a merchandiser is the glue between a brand and the brand's customers. They're the ones that actually decide and influence the way customers and the brand interact, whether it be inside a store or be it on a website. So the act of merchandising has a lot of art to it, a lot of instinct to it. But at the same time, technology, starting from data science and machine learning from several years ago to AI today, is attempting to making a merchandiser's life a lot easier and more efficient in what they do. So merchandising, I think, brings all the other aspects of my life together in an interesting way. So merchandising is super fascinating to me. And to me, if I were to pick one of those three, that is what I will pick.
Okay, so AI seems to be the influencer today in merchandising and differentiating yourself. Specifically, if we go to an e-commerce site, I've looked at your products and they're definitely new ideas on how to make that merchandising, I'm going to say, accessible to both big and small companies. How did you go about designing that solution, that market product fit?
That is a great question. The solution itself is evolving. Our product is fairly new in the market. And the way Syntium AI goes about making a merchandiser's lives easier has a certain uniqueness to it that is still largely unexplored by several other technology vendors in the market trying to serve the same customer base or user base that we serve. But the origin story is actually pretty organic. A couple of years ago, me and along with a small group of my colleagues from Salesforce, we wanted to understand how our merchandisers doing. This was around 2022. So if you remember, around 2020 when COVID hit, a lot of the hype around digital transformation started to happen, and anybody and everybody wanted to get into e-commerce. And a lot of investment and funding was poured into making every brand e-commerce friendly and digitally transform into a direct-to-consumer brand. Fast forward a couple of years, when we thought that all of these investments were happening because as consumers, we were shopping online. Suddenly we were buying everything from toilet paper to zucchini and vegetables online. The popular assumption of that time was that this trend is permanent, that this change in shopping behavior is permanent. So brands and retailers invested a lot of time, energy, and resources in building their direct-to-consumer e-commerce capabilities. What happened, as we all know now, with the benefit of hindsight, is around 2022, we realized that it was not a permanent change. Because as the market started to open up, as the social restrictions started to loosen up, we all started going back to grocery stores. We all started going back to malls, and we all started craving the physical experiences that we missed over those 2 years of being in lockdown. So suddenly, around this 2022 timeframe, brands and retailers realized that all the growth that they had seen, that they had all invested against, was starting to soften, was starting to flatten. So in the last couple of years, what has happened is that the double digit, triple digit growth even started to go south. So today, if you look at growth rates for last year, for example, direct to consumer brands, growth was in the single digits. Revenue is probably growing in an average of 12 to 15%. Margin, though, has been constantly trending down. It was at 8% average growth. Now it's at 6% under increased pressure. So this was the environment in which merchandisers had to figure out how to grow their e-commerce business. This was the environment in which Syntium was entering the market, trying to figure out how can we help merchandisers get back to growth. And when we started asking those questions to the merchandisers that we were working with, the brands that we were working with, we realized that another piece of technology, AI, was at the same time evolving, developing, coming into our zeitgeist. It was shaping the way we were thinking. In general, ChatGPT was coming into effect. So at that time, we realized that the problems, the challenges that the merchandisers were facing, AI was a perfect wrapper to take to solve that problem that merchandisers were trying to solve. So we ended up partnering with a handful of pretty large brands, marquee consumer good brands that people recognize these days. And we co-developed our product with the input of our customers. So this was not your classic story of a bunch of people in a garage or a basement trying to build something and then bring it to market. We built it pretty much in a joint development fashion with our early customers who trusted that we are the right people to solve that problem, and we had the right skill sets and the experience to solve that problem. And they trusted us, brought us into their world, and allowed us to build something that today exists as Syntium.
Yeah. So how did that make you feel when you saw these major brands trust you and come to you and say, yeah, we'll partner with you to do this versus the thousands of other technology companies out there?
It was humbling, but it taught me an important lesson that in business, trust is pretty much everything. That the best way to scale a business is to scale relationships. We, as a group, were fortunate enough to have developed a very trusted set of relationships with several brands in the industry over the course of the years that I worked at Salesforce, at Demandware, where my colleagues worked as well. And it was very humbling that when we left Salesforce, the trust that we had built carried forward with us. The trust was not necessarily associated with the company that we were working with, but it was associated with us as individuals. So it taught us an important lesson that trust is everything. Mm-hmm. And so we worked very hard to carry forward that trust, to make sure that we keep and maintain that trust with the folks we were working with, because those relationships are the ones that are going to help us succeed as a company.
Okay. So, you had the technology know-how and you had that, I'll say, emotional awareness to be humbled, but also be honored to work with people in the category you're talking about. When it comes to designing a new product and then getting it implemented and adopted, did that keep you awake at night, whether you could deliver on that promise?
To be honest, Ted, it still keeps me awake at night. As you like to say in this podcast,
good, I'm not the only one.
As you like to say in this podcast a lot, execution is everything. Mm-hmm. Now, ideas matter, Ideas are what change the world, but executing on those ideas when change actually happens. So, um, with AI, as with any technology, any new technology, change management is an important aspect of getting things done. So we as a company are very aware that creating a product is not the battle. It is getting it adopted, getting it used, and eventually, ultimately, helping customers realize the outcome that they are trying to realize using the technology is where rubber meets the road, and that is how we are able to prove our value to our customers. So execution through a very intentionally managed change management process is the key to how we are able to continue to nurture that trust that has been bestowed upon us.
Okay. On your website, you have a number of different, I'm going to say, as a layperson, academic sounding terms for AI: natural language processing, NLP, intent-based content creation, semantic relationship building, etc. How do you take those abstract concepts, new technologies, and put them together in a way that satisfies both the big client and the small, medium-sized enterprise?
It is an ongoing thing. So you're right. The website speaks to the academic side of AI. There's a reason to that for that, because the way we are not just problem solvers, we are also experts in the area that we are working with. So one of the ways we surface our expertise is by taking a slightly academic tone to it. However, when it comes to translating that into product capabilities, translating those capabilities into features that users use on a daily basis, we are very much practically oriented, very grounded in the reality of what it means to run an organization. As you and I talked in the beginning of this conversation, um, I also own a coffee shop business, right? And there are a couple of coffee shops, and we are regular users of AI in the shop. So as a small business owner, I am implementing AI in my business to help figure out how can I gain internal efficiencies, operational efficiencies, and achieve my growth goals using AI as a helper. So we take the same lessons and same learnings. I would translate that to what that means in a bigger organization. In a bigger organization, if you think about it, the problems don't change, but the dynamics and the context in which the problems are operating changes. For example, in a larger organization, there might be a marketing team and a merchandising team, where marketing team thinks about how to generate demand, and the merchandising team thinks about how to convert that demand into orders. In a small business, it's probably one person thinking about both things, how to generate demand and converting the same demand. But the problem of generating demand and converting demand exists in organizations of all sizes. However, the way an organization rallies around it, the way they channel their resources around it, and the way they come together to make that happen is different. Therefore, what that means for a company like Syntium is that the core capabilities are the same, but the way we enable organizations of different sizes to leverage those core capabilities is different. In a smaller organization, it's probably just one person or a very small group of individuals. But in a larger organization, there's more collaboration, there's more cross team communication, there's more handoffs and trade offs, more reviews and approvals. So those aspects come into play. So even though fundamentally it's the same problem and kind of the same solution, the context in which they're executed are different. And we just make sure that the product addresses that context. It's able to transition from a small company context to a large company context. That's how we address that situation.
So when you help an organization implement a solution from your organization, you're managing change and adoption. Do you find working with a small, medium-sized business or a large business, your role to help the implementation take place changes, or is it the same regardless of the size of the business?
Our role does change. we have to bob and weave according to the size of the organization we work with. Um, in a larger organization, we are usually this is a gross generalization. Of course, there are exceptions to this, but generally speaking, in a larger organization, we don't have to get as involved in the daily execution work because in a larger organization, we usually get assigned a project manager or a product manager that works with us and then translates what they have learned from us to the other stakeholders within their company. In a smaller organization, the person who works with us is also the person executing. So our involvement sometimes is a little bit more in the weeds of the situation, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
So the scope of which the scale at which we get involved varies slightly depending on the size of the organization, broadly speaking.
Okay. When you started then working and knowing, okay, we're going to have to work with the implementation and we're going to have varied types of strategies and approaches to doing that. How did you decide what the first product would actually be that you would have to design?
Oh, interesting story. The first product that we decided was actually going to be changed along the way. So what you see now as the first product, as we were executing our plan, we realized that we had to pivot a little bit.
Hmm.
And then 8 months later, we pivoted again. This is the adventure of doing a startup because every day is a new learning experience. Every day you get to learn new things. And from an execution standpoint, the team needs to be agile enough to change based on the signals we receive from the market. So initially, we thought that we were going to anchor ourselves in AI very deeply and just focus on automating our merchandisers' workload and work functions. Along the way, we realized that there are other areas that they needed immediate help on in the short run that weren't necessarily AI based technology, that they didn't need an AI solution. It just needed a better solution than what was available to them today. But AI was not the right vehicle to get them there. But nevertheless, we had to travel that path to make sure that our users are receiving something that they can use immediately, that can they can get value from immediately, even though it's not AI at the center of it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we sort of took that path. So our focus has always been how can we be useful to our customers? Surprise, surprise. Uh, how can we be useful to our customers? Whether it is speaking to the core mission that we have set for ourselves, or whether it's slightly adjacent to it, it really doesn't matter as long as we are helping our customers get to what they need to get to. And that's the path we took. So we have taken a couple of detours. However, the long-term mission of leveraging AI to make a merchandiser's lives easier is still the core mission that we are marching towards.
What did it feel like when you had to change course? You're going down on this product, you get the minimal viable aspects all down. Seems to be working. Everybody's really excited. Energy gets to flow. You're pumped up, and then all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, we got to do a change here. And 8 months later, you had to do another change. What was that? What did that feel like? What was the experience when you had to say to yourself, I'm in love with this, but I got to make a change?
Maybe it was just me. Uh, I was anxious and nervous about it, but for some reason, well, actually, I know the reason. The team, however, was pretty optimistic about the whole thing. I think the rationality for that was they realized that the detour is only going to help us as a group be more effective because we will be on a faster track to prove our value to our customers.
Mhm.
And because the whole team, we're a small team, but since the whole team was oriented towards making sure that we help our customers derive value, the detours we took, because we were convinced that we will get to the value destination faster, even though it's not the AI route to getting there, I think the team was um, more optimistic about it. So, from an internal execution standpoint, we actually did not feel the 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 trepidation, the anxiety that teams typically feel when making detours. Maybe we are an exception. I don't know. However, I think just making sure that as a group we are anchored towards that mission, even though our paths may bob and weave a little bit. I think that helped a lot in making sure that we were aligned in all these changes that we were making
Hmm.
over several months.
What were the conversations like between everybody? I'm sure you had different viewpoints. Some people said make the change, others said no, let's just keep going, charging straight ahead. What were some of those conversations like? Because I know sometimes they can get a little wild, but that also brings the team together.
Yes, those conversations were wild. And in the end, it did end up bringing the team together. One of the things that I had to do personally was to learn when to take a step back and not force the issue. Just like with everybody, I have an opinion. My co-founder has an opinion. The larger team has an opinion. Everybody has an opinion. It is great to work with a group of individuals where everybody has a specific opinion and a point of view on how to execute. What that does is it creates this group of optionality for us that to wade through to analyze. The worst thing that can happen to a startup is one person driving everything else. But in our case, even though everybody had an opinion, we were all grown people and we treated each other as grown-ups at the end of the day. But the one thing that I had to do was personally um, learn when to force the issue versus when to take a step back. Um, and me taking a step back may have actually helped, like instead of forcing an issue. So there's this very established perception that leaders have to lead from the front and they have to have an opinion on everything. But in my case, that has not always been proven true. In some cases, my opinion has been proven wrong by market signals. So so I had to learn the hard way that sometimes, as a leader, I have to recognize when I am wrong, or sometimes I have to recognize that I may actually not have the right answer and have the person who has the right answer lead the situation. So given a change in the situation, learning that having someone else lead the situation is totally okay, is totally fine, it's totally normal. And that is, in a way, the group leading collectively us forward. That is something that I had to learn over the course of the last 18 months that we've been doing this.
Yeah, it sounds to me as though you were learning the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, being open, learning. I don't have to lead all the time. The group has to come together. And actually, it sounds like you were learning change management and adoption for your own business in that process. That's what you just described, and I think that's fabulous. A lot of lessons to be taken, and it matured leadership, I'm sure, of everybody.
And
So,
to be honest, though, it has been great for mental health. Just knowing that on a given situation, we have different people who can lead a certain situation
mhm,
has been great for everybody's mental health because we are not putting this artificial expectation amongst ourselves that you own this, therefore you have to lead this. No, it doesn't really
right.
happen that way. Situationally, if someone else has the right point of view and the right capabilities to lead a situation, lead us through a particular situation, then we all just rally around that person and have that person lead.
Yeah. And I'm going to imagine that that greatly reduces the anxiety and stress that an individual would feel like, oh, I really have to come through on this because they may not have the answer. Somebody else might. That insight that just comes. And that's great. That's a good way to help the organization breathe, renew itself, give everybody a rest that we all need when you're in a startup. When you take a look at your product line, let's talk about one of the products. What gets you excited from the AI standpoint, but the practical application? So, if you could tell us a little bit about maybe the AI theory behind it, what the AI might be able to do, if you can, without disclosing IP, but the practical application. What's AI actually delivering today, and how does that look?
Yeah, that's a great question. Today, when we talk about AI, people immediately think about ChatGPT or any of the image generation tools like Midjourney or DALL-E. But AI's purpose and AI's applicability are much broader than that. Here's a use case. Here's a situation. One of our first product offering is what we call a search optimizer. Let me take a step back. Syntium is an agentic merchandising platform. By that, what we mean is we build agentic agents, essentially,
Mhm.
that help a merchandiser move faster with increased operational efficiency and aim for the kind of revenue goals and conversion rate goals that has been put upon them for them to accomplish in a much faster way. So we essentially are a margin play or a profitability play, if you will. Small group of merchandisers can do a lot more, manage a larger catalog, given that the AI is offloading a lot of the manual, laborious, repetitive work that they do on a daily basis so that they focus on the creative, artistic aspect of merchandising, which every merchandising organization needs. So that's fundamentally the problem we're trying to solve. Within the aspect of merchandising, if you double click into all the different things that happen in a life of a merchandiser, the ability to enable product discovery, the discoverability of a product on an e-commerce website, for example, is one such aspect that a merchandiser works on. What does that mean? There are different ways. If you go to an online e-commerce brand.com, there's a navigation menu. You can, navigate through the site, click on various categories and subcategories and land on a product. Or you can use a search box where you can type a keyword and get search results. Let's talk about that search box for a bit because it gets really tricky how the search box functions. A merchandiser does not need to or should not have to learn how a search engine works behind the scenes. But what if they want to influence that search box to generate results that reflect a brand's branding priorities? Here's an example. We know that khaki is a color, is a shade of brown. We also know that khakis is pants. It's a pair of trousers. So when someone, a shopper, types the word khakis in that search box, someone needs to tell the search engine to not focus on returning multiple products in the color khaki, but to return pants. Right? So if you're an apparel retailer, if you're a merchandiser working for the apparel retailer, how do you tell the search engine that khaki and khakis are completely different lexical meaning? It's not, one is not a singular and the other is not a plural of that original term. So it's a set of instructions that the merchandiser has to give. Now, somehow, if the merchandiser figures out how to give these instructions to the search engine, let's say the result comes out, and in the result, you've got some of the older products right above the fold, and then a bunch of new products below the fold. If that happens, the merchandiser has to figure out a way to promote the new products up and push the old products down. Because typically in a brand, the newer products have a premium position. Even in a store, when you walk into a store, the newer products have positions in the window. They get mannequin treatment and so on and so forth. So these are some of the challenges that a merchandiser has to face, has to figure out, has to work around.
Excellent.
In an e-commerce website. But when an AI tool like Syntium comes into play, the merchandiser does not have to understand how the search engine works. The merchandiser just has to express what they want. And something like Syntium, I'm not saying Syntium is the only tool to be used here, but using Syntium as an example, Syntium can automatically do the translation behind the scenes for the merchandiser without the merchandiser having to worry about anything. We take natural language instructions and we translate into whatever needs to happen, and we tell the search engine to do what it needs to do. Similarly, for things that need to be boosted up or buried down, merchandiser can just drag and drop different products visually, and voila, the search results page is organized. On top of that, merchandisers typically have a KPI goal. They are either asked to improve their conversion rate or improve the average order value or improve the total revenue that their category generates. So for a merchandiser to do that, they have to get mathematical. They have to understand how much have these products sold. What's the most popular product? Not just in my category, but when someone searches for khaki versus someone searches for camo, different set of products come up. How do these sell? within that experience? What's the ideal way to promote certain products so that average order value goes up, so that conversion rate improves? There's a lot of data downloading into Excel spreadsheets and running linear equations and doing a lot of complex math involved that the merchandisers don't necessarily have to do. Syntium does it for them. All they have to do is tell the system, hey, I want to improve conversion rate on this grid page. And Syntium automatically figures out what the right products are and what the right order is in which these products have to be displayed to the shopper. So this is a use case, a scenario where previously there's a lot of clicking involved. There's a lot of downloading data, putting that in the spreadsheet, doing some mathematics, coming back to the search engine, trying to figure out how the math translates to search engine. All that gets compressed into one screen, no math involved. Merchandiser brings their sense of merchandising art to the table, and we take care of all the science.
That was fascinating. Thank you. Spoken in very common terms that I think a lot of business people can understand. So the example you just gave us right now, how many different technologies or quote unquote types of AI are involved in that solution? You have natural language processing, you mentioned.
Yes.
What are some of the other type of technologies that you might be using in something like that?
Yes, that's a great question. It's a collection of different techniques involved. Today, these days, everything gets labeled as AI, but some of these techniques existed even when this was called data science or machine learning or just business analytics back in the day.
You're dating yourself.
I probably am. But this involves even simpler techniques like linear regression, algebraic equations play a role. They all are interconnected. They have to connect to an NLP system, and that NLP system's outcome has to connect with a user experience system. So it is the collection of basic business analytics techniques, basic machine learning techniques with modern AI like LLMs, like large language models. And by the way, large language models are perfect for the use case that I just described. Because large language models, think about it, they are language models. And search is a linguistic problem. Connecting the language that a shopper is using to search a site to the language that the brand is using to describe their products. And LLMs are essentially a connective tissue that do an excellent job of connecting the two endpoints. What we do is instead of just connecting it and just praying that everything works, we have the right governance in place. We have simple things like undoing something. If the LLM does something, a simple Control Z or an undo feature that will just reverse the action so that the merchandiser can do something else if they disagree with the outcome. So those guardrails that help the merchandiser feel safe that if the LLM does something that is not to their liking, they can go back, that they can measure the outcome, that they can change the technique that they use moving forward. So all these are the things and techniques that are required from a governance and trust perspective. All those play a role as well, in addition to the basic machine learning and AI tools and technologies that we use to solve this problem.
How could you estimate, if possible, how many people years it took to put all the intelligence together and package it in your product that you could put in, I'm going to assume pretty simply and not an awful lot of time involved to implement it into a system?
Yeah, I think
client?
that's where the most of the work was. The majority of the work was doing that, because we could not afford to design a system that took months to implement.
Right.
Right. Especially these days, retailers' margins are going south, and many brands are struggling with the current macroeconomic circumstances, trying to figure out how 2025 is going to end up. So there's not a lot of margin for error here. There's not a lot of OpEx left on the table to use. So large part of solving this problem was about how to make it as turnkey as possible, how to make it as execution and implementation friendly as possible. The technologies existed. A lot of other vendors also do it. but many of them take months to implement and months to get adoption. But I think our unique secret sauce is we figured out a way in which it can be deployed in a very short period of time,
Mhm.
weeks, if not days. And it can be easily tested and validated so that if the merchandiser feels that they have, for whatever reason, made the wrong decision choosing Syntium, there is an off ramp that they can get off the system and they would not have spent a lot of time and money in it. That is, I think, something we do really, really well. And we're proud of that. And it's something that differentiates us from everybody else in the market.
Excellent. Excellent. The example you described in detail, common language, very understandable. Is that the reason why AI is probably equalizing the market, democratizing the market between the big company and the smaller company, your coffee shops? You can do virtually the same thing with the technology.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a great equalizer because just reflecting upon my own experience here, when I think about my coffee shop business, things like social media posts, right? Big companies may have copywriters to create the right copy for each social media post.
Mhm.
But AI has basically tools like Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini have basically made it so accessible that people have gotten very comfortable writing good quality copy. Now, some may say that it's all just rehashed copy, but nevertheless, just the fact that it has become accessible to mainstream businesses is a big deal, is a big economic deal for us as a society, I believe. So, that's one clear example of how AI has sort of leveled the playing field a little bit.
Mhm.
Writing is one area. The other area is creative. If you've seen tools like this is not a plug, by the way. Adobe Firefly is a phenomenal tool that we use. It generates consistent images. It generates imagery that are creative, consistent, and can be repurposed in different ways. And the way Adobe has gone about um, licensing the openly available information to help their LLMs learn, I believe is the right way to do it. So, also not just words, but also images and pictures. Again, social media imagery, website imagery, marketing material, email content, all these different places where creativity has to play a role, where larger organizations have access to expensive pool of creative talent and small organizations don't. This collection of tool set has leveled the playing field. Now, the small businesses also have a similar set of capabilities. Now it's about who can execute better, who is nimble enough to learn these tools to put two together to execute better.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, let's kind of summarize everything that you've explained very, very well. Give me a picture of what you think where this technology is going. What will it look like for an e-commerce site and an individual to go in 3 to 5 years from now? What would that experience be like? What's going to happen with all this new technology that's hitting the market?
So imagine this: a merchandiser for a brand, let's say a large apparel brand, spends most of her day in meetings because she is merchandising is a very collaborative affair. She has to meet with the marketing department, the creative department, technology department, engineering department, buyers, etc., etc. Because merchandising is very collaborative. And she's just jumping from one meeting to another, trying to coordinate and collaborate across all these different functions. When does work happen? But imagine this type of scenario. She's doing these meetings, one meeting to the next. Around 11 o'clock, she wants a coffee break. Right? There's a little bit of time. So she gets up her desk, walks down to the street, goes to the next block to her favorite coffee shop, goes to have a coffee, goes to the barista, places an order, and she wants to pick it up and get back to her desk. So she's just waiting for the order to get picked up. So while she's waiting, typical wait time is about 7 to 8 minutes. She takes out her phone. And when she takes out her phone, she sees a couple of alerts. AI, like Syntium, has sent a couple of alerts to her phone. where it says, hey, this new category that you were supposed to launch yesterday just launched, and shoppers are not able to find this one new SKU that was part of this new category. Would you like to fix it? She taps the button. It brings her to an application screen where she can do some things to fix the problem, fixes it. Then she says another alert, and she says an alert something along the lines of, hey, for the past 3 days, this particular keyword, search term, say olive green, has been trending on your site. This is the first time you've launched a product in the olive green color and everybody's searching for it. Would you like to make sure that all the olive green products are showing up in the search result? There are 3 products that are not showing up in the search results. Would you like to fix that? And she taps on that alert. She punches a couple of buttons. It's fixed. The 3 missing products are now included as part of the search for olive green. She does these couple of things. Her coffee is ready by the time she walks up to the front, picks up the coffee, gets back to her office, goes into the next meeting, and lets people know that there were a couple of issues. They've been fixed. Everybody can go about doing their jobs. This is the type of future we imagine, where in such scenarios, someone, a VP or a senior vice president, would have seen that issue, sent an email. Everybody would have some anxiety, some stress, marshaling people around, getting into a meeting, discussing what the problem was. All that goes away. The system monitors for these things. Goals are known. The brand's attempted branding strategy is known. So the system automatically tells the user, hey, here are the things that need to be done. The user does them and moves on with their day.
It sounds to me like you just described an agent called the merchandiser of the future.
No, let me make a note of that. Maybe I'll start using it in my website.
Okay. Okay. So, had a fabulous conversation here. Fabulous conversation. One last question that I have for you. What's involved with implementing one of your products into the actual day-to-day practical application of a business? And secondly, if I can, how do you get them to adopt it on a day-to-day use?
So implementing a product is fairly straightforward. After they sign a contract, the implementation itself is a 4-step process. We do 3 steps. The customer does 1, typically done in a 2-week time frame. The whole thing takes 2 to 3 weeks, where we are doing most of the work. The customer's doing maybe a couple of days worth of work, and it's up and running. The way that the genius around Syntium's architecture is that it can be implemented gradually. So you don't have to wait till everything's in place. You can implement a couple of pieces, start using it, then implement a couple more, start using that, so on and so forth. So once that happens, what we do is we have a very simple enablement package, a combination of videos and documentation that users can view to understand how to use the system. And then we open up a Slack channel that is dedicated to them. A team is made available to them as they start using it. They can Slack us, and we respond pretty much within the hour, usually, within reasonable amount of time. Within reason, obviously. And from there on, it's pretty simple to use. The reason why users love using us is because it's very intuitive. Even though it's AI, there's not a lot of AI-ish things to learn.
Mm-hmm.
It's abstracted. It's under the hood. It's very visual for them to learn. So while we provide all these packaging, these training material to them, usually it's very intuitive enough that they can actually get started by themselves.
Good. And that's adaptive. That's how they adapt. They use it every day. Yeah. Okay.
That's right. And they adapt. They use it every day, and they don't have to learn everything to get started. They start using a couple of features, demonstrate value internally for themselves and their teams, and then slowly, gradually expand the usage to more and more features and capabilities that Syntium has.
Okay.
So that Lego block style execution adoption we found is very makes things smoother and helping people feel more comfortable with what we have.
Yeah. So you're basically giving them the cookie crumbs, and they just get bigger and bigger crumbs as they move along because there's more opportunity that they can of creating value that they can find through your organization.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent strategy. Good strategy. Okay. Vinod, what's the future look like for you?
Syntium is a startup, and as such, we are in the process of growing our customer base. So our focus has been two-pronged. One is develop the product and develop our customer base. So in about 3 years down the line, 3 to 5 years down the line, we intend to be the preeminent agentic merchandising engine that's in the market. We expect ourselves to be multi-platform, as in we work with all the major commerce platforms that are available in the market, all the major search engines that are available in the market, so that we are truly platform agnostic. We can work irrespective of what the brand has chosen to implement to run their e-commerce business.
Mm.
And as a team, we fully expect ourselves to be nimble, small, and agile because there's this superpower you get from being nimble, small, and agile that large companies lose over a period of time. So while we are aiming for those goals, we intend to keep ourselves nimble and agile throughout the course.
Very good. And if somebody should want to talk to you personally, what's the best way of contacting you?
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn pretty much every day. DM me if you have any questions. So if you just want to chat about AI, just nerd out a little bit, I'm available. That's my main source of interaction with the outside world these days.
Okay. Vinod, thank you very much for your time. This is a fascinating conversation, and you speak so eloquently and with clarity in what you're doing. It's a pleasure listening to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Ted, the pleasure's mine. I enjoyed our conversation, and your questions were inquisitive, authentic, and genuine. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. Hi, Ted Wolf here. I want to thank you for joining us for this Implementors video. The Implementors podcast is presented by GuideWise, where we, along with our vetted member community, recognize that ideas are easy, but implementation is hard. To learn more about getting things done with GuideWise, please visit us at guidewise.io. And to conquer your implementation struggles, please like and share this video and subscribe to our channel. Happy implementing.